On April 4, 1988, a jogger was running his usual route through a rural ditch area in Fort Wayne, Indiana, when he spotted something unusual in the distance. As he approached, what he found would haunt the community for decades: the body of 8-year-old April Tinsley. She had been missing for 3 days. The jogger immediately ran to the nearest home and called police, setting in motion one of Indiana's most notorious cold cases that would take exactly 30 years to solve. Welcome to Mystique Cold Cases. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Okay, let's dive into this story. April Marie Tinsley was just 8 years old when her life was tragically cut short. Born on March 18, 1980, April was a first grader at Fairfield Elementary School in Fort Wayne. She lived with her mother Janet in an apartment complex on the city's north side. Those who knew April described her as a cheerful, friendly little girl who loved school and playing with her friends. She had a bright smile that her mother says could light up a room. April enjoyed coloring, playing with her dolls and riding her bike around the neighborhood. "She'd just tell you she loved you all the time," Janet Tinsley would later recall. "She'd want to help you with anything. If you were working on something, she wanted to be right there trying to help you." April's teachers remember her as an eager student who was always raising her hand to answer questions. She had dreams of becoming a teacher herself someday. Friday, April 1st, 1988 began as an ordinary day. April attended school and then headed to a friend's house to play after classes ended. What made this day different was April's decision to walk home alone. At approximately 3:00 p.m., April left her friend's house to walk the few blocks back to her apartment. The route would take her through her familiar neighborhood, past houses where neighbors knew her by name. According to witnesses, April was last seen alive at around 3:15 p.m. at the corner of William Street and Donnan Drive. A witness reported seeing April being approached by a man in a blue pickup truck. This would be the last confirmed sighting of April Tinsley alive. When April didn't return home by dinner time, her mother Janet began calling friends and neighbors before contacting police to report her daughter missing. April's murder sent shockwaves through Fort Wayne, especially among parents with young children. A community that once felt safe was suddenly gripped by fear. More than 1,000 people attended April's funeral, many of whom had never met her but were deeply affected by the tragedy. Fort Wayne Police Chief Kevin Mullen would later say, "This case changed Fort Wayne. Parents who once let their children play freely in neighborhoods now watched them like hawks." Schools implemented new safety protocols, including stricter pickup policies and stranger danger education programs. Children were no longer allowed to walk to school alone. The carefree atmosphere of the community was replaced with constant vigilance. Police immediately launched an extensive investigation. Within 24 hours of discovering April's body, investigators had conducted over 100 interviews and established a dedicated hotline for tips. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood where April was last seen, going door to door showing her picture. The FBI joined local authorities, bringing in specialized child abduction experts. Law enforcement collected and analyzed physical evidence found at the scene, including DNA samples, though DNA technology was still in its early stages in 1988. Investigators focused intensely on identifying the blue pickup truck witnessed at April's last known location. They questioned registered sex offenders in the area and developed theories about whether the perpetrator was a local resident familiar with the neighborhood or someone passing through. Despite thousands of man-hours, the case eventually went cold. No arrest was made. What made this case particularly disturbing was what happened 2 years after April's murder. In May 1990, someone scrawled a message in crayon on a barn less than a mile from where April's body had been found. "I kill 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley. I will kill again." The message sent new waves of fear through the community and reignited the investigation. Police photographed and analyzed the handwriting, but it led to no immediate breakthroughs. Then, in 2004, the case took another chilling turn. Between 2004 and 2005, 4 handwritten notes were left at different locations around Fort Wayne. The notes were placed on young girls' bicycles or in mailboxes. Each contained a deeply disturbing message that referenced April Tinsley's murder and implied the writer was responsible. Even more terrifying, each note was accompanied by a Polaroid photograph and a used item that could provide DNA evidence. The writer seemed to be taunting police, confident he would never be caught. For decades, the DNA evidence collected in 1988 and from the 2004 notes sat in evidence storage, occasionally reanalyzed as technology improved, but never matching any known suspects in the system. The breakthrough came in May 2018, exactly 30 years after April's murder. Detective Brian Martin of the Fort Wayne Police Department and Indiana State Police Detective Clint Hetrick decided to try a revolutionary new approach that had recently solved other cold cases: genetic genealogy. They partnered with Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based company specializing in DNA phenotyping. Using the suspect's DNA, Parabon uploaded the genetic profile to GeneMatch, a public genealogy database where users voluntarily share their DNA information. The results weren't immediate. Instead of a direct match, the system identified distant relatives of the suspect. Genetic genealogist C.C. Moore then constructed a family tree, working backward to find common ancestors and then forward to identify potential suspects living in the Fort Wayne area at the time of April's murder. The genetic genealogy analysis narrowed the pool of potential suspects to two brothers living in the Fort Wayne area. To determine which one might be responsible, investigators needed to collect a fresh DNA sample to compare against the crime scene evidence. In July 2018, detectives began surveillance on one of the brothers, 59-year-old John D. Miller, who lived in Grable, Indiana, just 15 miles northeast of Fort Wayne. They observed him discard items outside his mobile home and collected several, including cigarette butts. These items were rushed to the lab for DNA testing. Scientists extracted genetic material and compared it to the DNA preserved from April's case. After 30 years of waiting, they had their answer. The DNA was a match to the evidence collected in 1988 and to the disturbing notes from 2004. The probability of the DNA belonging to anyone else was calculated at 1 in 8 trillion. Investigators had finally found April Tinsley's killer. On July 15, 2018, police approached John D. Miller's trailer in Grable. When asked if he knew why they were there, Miller reportedly replied, "April Tinsley." Miller was a 59-year-old man who had lived in the Fort Wayne area his entire life. He had worked various jobs but kept a low profile. Although he had a minor criminal record, he had never been considered a serious suspect in April's case. Most disturbing was how close he had remained to the scene of his crime. For 30 years, Miller had lived within 20 miles of where April's body was found and where her family continued to mourn her. Miller had no meaningful connections to April or her family. She was randomly targeted as she walked alone that fateful day in 1988. In December 2018, John D. Miller pleaded guilty to murder and related charges. He was sentenced to 80 years in prison. At the sentencing hearing, April's mother, Janet Tinsley, finally had the opportunity to address her daughter's killer. "I've been waiting for this day for 30 years. Now you can go to jail, and you can sit there and think about what you did to my daughter." The case resolution brought closure not only to April's family, but to an entire community that had lived under the shadow of this crime for 3 decades. Former and current investigators who had worked on the case through the years gathered at the courthouse, many with tears in their eyes. Fort Wayne Police Chief Steve Reed stated, "This case is why we never give up, why we never destroy evidence, and why we embrace new technology. Today, we finally have justice for April." April Tinsley's case has become one of the most significant examples of how genetic genealogy can solve decades-old cold cases. Her story has been featured in forensic television shows and is now taught in criminal justice programs. In Fort Wayne, a memorial garden named after April stands as a reminder of her life. Every year on April 1st, community members gather there to release balloons in her memory. April's mother, Janet, now advocates for child safety awareness and supports other families of victims. The technological breakthrough that solved this case has given hope to countless families still waiting for answers in their own cold cases. April's legacy lives on not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but in the evolution of justice itself. If you found this case interesting, please like and subscribe for more true crime cases solved through modern technology. Next week, we'll explore how a 1972 murder was finally solved through a family Christmas gift.